Dust motes drifted slowly in the light of the afternoon sun, piercing through the curtains of the small tailoring and repair shop owned by Sonia Schwetz. The young woman sat at her sewing machine, the rhythmic thud of the needle in time with her focused work on a new pattern. There were few visitors today. The shop owner paused and sighed, then gently stroked her beloved machine, the one she would soon have to part with. The beautiful brand-new sewing machine bought on credit had barely covered its costs. Profit was a distant thought, and Sonia had already nearly accepted the harsh and unpleasant inevitability of her situation. The sharp, rattling jingle of the doorbell made her look up. A young, strikingly attractive woman entered the atelier. Sonia couldn't help but notice how incredibly stylish this woman appeared, and was taken aback by how someone like her could possibly end up in such a modest, almost invisible shop. "Do you do hemming?" the visitor asked, surveying the space, which resembled more of a cramped storage room than a professional establishment. "Yes, of course," Sonia nodded. "I just need to shorten them by a couple of centimeters," the stylish woman said, placing a bundle on the table. "How long will it take?" "About 15 minutes, Sonia replied, unfolding the paper and inspecting the men's trousers with their pinned-up cuffs. "Don't take too long. I'm in a hurry," the client said, not even glancing at Sonia, before stepping out with the chime of the doorbell echoing behind her. Sonia immediately set to work. Every penny counted. Each order was a lifeline. The smell of cigarette smoke drifted in from under the slightly ajar door. Sonia coughed and was about to stand up to ask the woman to move further away when the client's phone began to ring. Through the door came a sugary female voice from outside. "Zurabik, darling, you can't even imagine where I am," the client was saying to someone. "I'm still tanning at the solarium, and now I had to stop by this shabby hole to hem the pants of some kid. Playing the role of the caring mommy, I guess." Sonia felt her face flush at the disparaging tone in which her atelier had been mentioned, but she stifled the indignation. What good would it do to argue with such people? Losing an order would happen in a heartbeat. With renewed vigor, Sonia resumed hemming the trousers. Standing just outside the door, the client continued, "Oh, don't be silly, of course. I don't love him." She suddenly laughed in a way that made Sonia uncomfortable. "I almost feel sorry for the silly young boy. He's in love with me, like a foolish, loyal little dog. So clingy, always wanting me to indulge his romantic fantasies. He's constantly whispering sweet nothings. It's already annoying. But what wouldn't you endure for a win, right?" The stranger paused, apparently listening to her conversation partner, then added with a smug tone, "Well, Zurab, how could you even compare? Where are you, man? He's just a wimp." She laughed again, but this time more coquettishly. "Oh, Zurabek! Oh, you naughty boy, stop teasing me with your jealousy. Of course I'm yours." Sonia, who had overheard this confession, felt a chill run down her spine. She suddenly felt pity for the deceived, naive man who had fallen into the clutches of this heartless woman. How vile it must be to despise someone who trusts you so completely, but that wasn't all. The client lowered her voice, sharing her plans with her unseen companion. "As I told you, my goal is a fake marriage with this milk-faced kid. Won't be long now. Tomorrow the engagement. Then I'll enter the family, gain access to their money and influence. And with my ambitions, Zurabik, you know I won't be stuck playing second fiddle for long. This business that his daddy worked so hard to build, it'll be mine," she purred possessively. "Guess who I'll appoint as my chief beloved deputy?" "Ah, my Zurabik. I do love perceptive men," Sonia swallowed hard. Standing just 2 steps away from the loss of her own business, she understood all too well what it meant to lose everything. She remembered the days spent at the sewing table, when she wasn't just stitching, but also working on patterns for her own collection of dresses, dreaming of recognition. No one knew how much effort, how many hopes she had invested in her work. If someone so cynically decided to take or steal her dream, her business, she knew she wouldn't survive it. The thought struck her so sharply that her hand instinctively reached for the stack of receipts. With a swift motion, she tore off a piece from the top one, then, on the scrap, she decisively wrote with a pen, "Your fiancé is not who she claims to be. Don't trust her." Setting the pen down, the seamstress took scissors and a thin scrap of fabric. Quickly and neatly, she stitched a small patch to the inside of the trouser pocket, slipped the note under it, and finished sewing it securely with a few final stitches. Sonia completed the task just as the customer walked through the door. "Well, what a dump, God, is it done?" the client asked impatiently. "How much do I owe?" "Here you go," Sonia replied, handing over the hemmed trousers while avoiding eye contact. The customer took the order, paid, and hurried out of the modest atelier. Sonia exhaled, thinking to herself, "People can be so vile. I've done all I can. Now it's up to fate to help these poor souls." The next day there were no orders, and Sonia sat staring out the window. The thought of the looming rent payment gnawed at her, and doubts about whether she should just close shop by the end of the month crowded her mind again. At that moment, the door of the atelier swung open with the sharp chime of the bell. A young man stood in the doorway. He was stylishly dressed in smart casual attire, nothing flashy but expensive. Dark trousers, a thin cashmere sweater over a shirt, and leather loafers. There was an air of refinement about him, a sensitive soul. However, his face was twisted with a mix of confusion and righteous anger. "Tell me, did you write that malicious note and attach it to my pants?" he demanded from the doorway, not bothering to greet her. Sonia flinched. She had completely forgotten about her impulsive action from the previous day. Yes, she had wanted the deceived man to know the truth, but she never imagined someone would come to her with complaints. Caught off guard, she found no better response than to ask, "Excuse me, is there an issue with the trousers?" Apparently, her question only strengthened the young man's suspicion. His anger intensified, and he took a step closer. "What do the trousers have to do with it? Why did you write that filth about my fiancé?" he pressed. Sonia realized denying it was pointless. She composed herself and said, "I wrote what I heard. The girl who brought the trousers spoke of you. Let's say unflatteringly," she explained carefully. The young man's forceful demeanor faltered. He sat down on a nearby chair, looking perplexed. "What exactly did you hear?" he asked, now with less aggression. Seeing that the stranger was cooling down, Sonia decided to take the initiative. "First, answer me this. How did you know it was me who wrote it?" she demanded, looking him straight in the eye. "I didn't leave any contact information." The young man snorted and showed her the scrap of receipt. Sonia gasped. On the edge of the torn piece, a part of an address was visible. The street and house number. She couldn't believe it. In her haste, she had revealed herself. "You gave the address yourself," the visitor said, with a light, nervous chuckle. It was useless to deny it now. Sonia decided to tell the poor young man about the cynical conversation his fiancée had had with someone named Zurabik. The young man listened with a tense expression, growing paler as the details sank in. When the girl finished speaking, he was silent for a long time, finally lifting his head. "I don't believe it," he said firmly, but doubt flickered in his eyes. "Snezana couldn't. This is a lie. A vicious lie." Sonia was at a loss, not knowing how to prove her words. Then her gaze fell upon the inconspicuous security camera above the door, a camera she had long forgotten about. "Well, of course," she exclaimed, pointing at the camera. "The camera should have recorded everything I said." The young man perked up. They hurried over to her laptop and quickly found the relevant file. On the screen appeared yesterday's scene. The stylish woman by the slightly open door, the sounds of her phone conversation, her cynical laughter. Sonia glanced at the young man. He was sitting, utterly crushed. His shoulders slumped, and his gaze was fixed on one spot. He was slowly processing what he had just seen. "What's your name?" Sonia asked softly. "Zahar?" He replied, barely audible. "And mine? I'm Sonia." She introduced herself. Suddenly, as if awakening from a dream, Zahar sprang to his feet. Desperation was written all over his face. "It's happening today." "Today?" he almost groaned, grabbing his hair and tousling his carefully styled haircut. "My father's hosting a reception at a restaurant. His friends are coming, big investors, business partners, and he's decided to announce our engagement there." Snezana was insistent. Zahar took a step across the room. His voice trembled. "Now I understand. She wanted all of my father's friends, all his business partners, to remember her as a trusted ally. She's counting on being respected after the engagement. I no longer matter." He stood in the middle of the cramped room. "To be honest, my father is just as captivated by Snezana as I am. She's practically enchanted him with her ambition and drive. My opinion doesn't even matter anymore. He looked at Sonia with horror in his eyes. You have to help me. You're the only one who knows the truth, and you have that video. Sonia felt herself being drawn into the whirlwind of this scandal and tried to distance herself. What does this have to do with me? Just take the recording. Show it to your father and those people. The young man shook his head vigorously. No, that's not enough. His voice was filled with desperation. The recording shows Snezana coming and going, but during the conversation she's outside by the door and you can't see her. You can hear her voice, yes, but she'll claim it's someone else's voice, or say the video's been tampered with. I need a live witness, Sonia. You have to be with me and confirm that it's her voice. Sonia fell silent, getting entangled in such a scandal, speaking out at a formal event against a wealthy and influential family. Then she glanced at the new sewing machine, remembering the rent payment due, the overdue credit, the taxes rising year by year, and the desperate state of her business. This atelier was tied to her dream. All right, Zahar, I'll help, Sonia finally said, then added, but I'm in a very tough spot. My atelier is on the brink of ruin. I'll help you, but only for a reward that can save my business. My God, of course. Zahar jumped up. I'm immeasurably grateful. After discussing their plan of action, Sonia stepped into the wardrobe, hidden behind a thick curtain away from the eyes of customers. She changed into her best, most original dress, one she had created in secret, away from the world's gaze. The fabric flowed gracefully, and the lines of the design accentuated her elegant figure. In this dress, she no longer felt like a seamstress burdened by debts, but a graceful beauty. She was proud of her creation. When she emerged, Zahar was literally speechless. His eyes widened in admiration. This is incredible, he breathed. Where did you get such an elegant dress? I imagine it must have cost a fortune. From the humble appearance of this atelier, you wouldn't think you could afford such luxury. Sonia smiled with dignity. This dress was made by me. She watched with pleasure as the young rich man's jaw dropped, then explained. In my free time, I design patterns for my original dresses. I dream of one day dazzling the world with my collections on the runways of famous fashion houses. Right now, though, it's not the time for that. Times are tough, but I still manage to save a little for my dream, and am slowly building my collection to conquer the world with it. Zahar, who had an eye for fashion, was intrigued. He asked Sonia to show him her completed works. With pride, she led him into the wardrobe, where beautiful dresses, covered by protective garment bags, hung on the racks. Zahar was captivated by Sonia's talent. He now looked at her with entirely new eyes. Sonia, you've truly captivated me. I never would have thought such a talented craftswoman worked here. The evening reception at the luxurious restaurant had already begun when Zahar led Sonia into the hall, filled with the muted hum of voices, the clinking of glasses, and the shimmer of expensive attire. It was a semi-social, semi-business event, where major investments and partnership agreements were being discussed. The hall's manager escorted the guests to an empty table, where Zahar left Sonia and headed toward the central table, where his father sat. At some point, Zahar's father, a large and imposing man, took the microphone and, cutting through the business chatter, spoke with a floating mechanical tone. Dear friends, partners, we've gathered here today to discuss our joint projects. But aside from all that, I have an important announcement to make, which my son will share with you. Please, Zahar, Snezana, come up to the stage. He paused, casting a significant look around the room. Please, pay attention to this promising, charming young woman. Very soon, she will become famous. Snezana, beaming like a polished kettle, made her way to the stage. Zahar followed her. Standing next to her fiancé, Snezana took the microphone. I'm so happy, Zaharik. He agrees to everything, she announced with a victorious smile, coquettishly extending her left hand. In Zahar's hand, a small box with a ring briefly flashed, but he hesitated. Well, go ahead, my sweet, Snezana urged, growing impatient. Don't drag it out. Put the ring on. Zahar, usually compliant, suddenly became stubborn. Hold on, Snezana, he said firmly, shaking his tousled head. Let me ask in front of everyone. Are you ready to be a faithful wife to me, in joy and in sorrow?" Snezana laughed theatrically, trying to turn it into a joke. "Of course, silly. Why are you suddenly doubting? Are you nervous or something?" "No, I'm not nervous," Zahar replied, his voice growing louder. "I have some doubts about the honesty of your words and intentions." Snezana paled. "Zahar, what have you convinced yourself of?" "You're such a dreamer," she exclaimed with feigned indignation. "What doubts? We love each other." But Zahar continued, "I believe you love someone else, and I have a witness to your betrayal." He pointed to Sonia, who was frozen at her table. Snezana squinted, trying to make out the woman Zahar had indicated. "I'm seeing her for the first time," she said arrogantly, "and she looks ridiculous in that homemade dress." "Did you hire some actress in disguise to ruin my engagement?" Sonia, already feeling out of place, was hit hard by the direct and public insult to her dress, to her cherished dream. The sting of it struck her like a whip, and she wouldn't remain silent. "Unlike you, Snezana, I'm not an actress," Sonia said loudly and clearly, standing up from her seat. "And I'm testifying against you. You're a cynical adulteress and a pathological liar." She turned to Zahar and gave him a resolute nod. He mirrored her gesture and raised his hand, signaling the administrator into action. The man leaned over the console in the corner of the room. Suddenly, a video feed from the security camera appeared on the huge screen. Snezana's loud, cynical voice filled the room. "You know, he's madly in love, like a foolish, devoted little dog. This business that his daddy worked so hard to build, it's going to be mine. Guess who I'll appoint as my chief beloved deputy? Zarabik, I'm yours." A dead silence hung over the hall. Snezana, her face as pale as a sheet, couldn't bear to watch the rest of the footage. In a fit of rage, she hurled the microphone at the stage and lunged toward Sonia. "You worthless seamstress!" she hissed, raising her hand to strike Sonia. But Zahar, sharp and resolute, intercepted her arm, his gaze stern. "Don't you dare touch her, Snezana," he commanded sharply. Snezana suddenly shrank back. She looked around, evidently realizing that her power over these men had evaporated, that Zahar no longer trembled before her, and that his father and all the guests in the hall were now looking at her with utter disdain. The triumph she had planned had turned into a complete and humiliating disgrace. Losing all her arrogance, she retreated, covering her face with her hands, and fled from the restaurant. Zahar's father, the first among the guests to recover from the shock, picked up the microphone. "Well, dear friends," he said with remarkable composure, looking at the screen, "I hope you've all seen this swindler for who she truly is. I trust none of you will have dealings with her now. As the saying goes, forewarned is forearmed." He paused briefly, then continued, addressing Zahar. "I'm proud of you, son. You've shown care for the family business and recognized the con artist in time." Taking advantage of the moment, Zahar stepped forward. "The truth came to light thanks to one honest woman. She risked everything, not only to save me, but to protect the honor of our family." After pausing for a moment, Zahar led the embarrassed seamstress into the spotlight. Sonia, an amazingly gifted clothing designer. The dress you see on her, she created and sewed with her own hands. And just look at how exquisite her work is. Zahar's father's friends looked on with interest, admiring the refined, flowing dress on the young woman. Immediately, a couple of prominent figures, clearly from the world of fashion, stepped forward from the circle of influential guests. "Excuse me, Sophia," one of them said, intrigued as he examined her dress. "Original ideas, flawless craftsmanship, and what tailoring. We're interested in investing in your design ideas and helping with your first runway show at our fashion house." Sonia felt herself flush with heat from the shock. She, a simple seamstress, had suddenly found herself face to face with wealthy investors. Zahar, sensing her confusion, gently intervened, smoothly taking control of the conversation. "Gentlemen, I'm glad you appreciate Sonia's talent," he said with a smile. "Since she is currently focused on her creative work, I am more than happy to take on the role of representing her interests. Let's discuss the details later." Sonia looked at him with immense gratitude. He had freed her from the need to handle complex business matters she knew nothing about. Over time, Sonia created her own fashion line. Zahar became her reliable development director, securing investments from his father's company to quickly expand their joint business. The young designer was able to fully concentrate on the creative side, coming up with new clothing designs and mentoring young, lesser-known talented designers. Their bold and original clothing quickly rose to the top of the fashion rankings and began to set new trends. Sonia Schwetz's name became famous in the world of fashion, based on their successful partnership and mutual support. A deep romantic bond developed between Sonia and Zahar. Thus, their business not only became a prosperous venture, but also a happy family business. And let me know if you enjoyed my story. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel. A new story will be released here in just a few days. Don't miss it.